ready to call the council or the workshop to order?
Sure.
Good deal. So I have number one, Mark Haft, Pollinator Garden at his property at 326 Buck Avenue Northwest.
Alright, Mark has planted a pollinator garden and I went back and we really didn't approve to do that because we don't have any regulations in regards to the pollinator garden, and if somebody would drive past, it basically looks like obnoxious weeds. And so based on our ordinance, they're over the height that they should be, and so obviously you were visited by Rob or received a letter. And so we need to discuss this if you want to go further with it. In front of the council tonight is ordinance number 137 from North Mankato, which was given to me by Rob in regards to the guidelines that North Mankato follows for a pollinator garden. If Mark would continue, I would strongly recommend that the council consider some recommendations or some guidelines in regards to how to go forward. So it does not look like a weed infested lawn, because obviously we are concerned about if we let this go and there's no regulations, nobody really knows that it's a pollinator garden. So that kind of encourages others that, well, he's not mowing his lawn, we're not going to mow our lawn. So we need to discuss how we want to move forward, because he has already established it, and so at this time the council or anybody can comment on that.
So I just got a copy of this when Heather brought him down a couple minutes ago.
Yep.
So, I don't know what they're actually saying they do or don't do in, North Mankato. Cause I haven't drove around North Mankato, I haven't seen any of them, but.
Well, I think this issue came up, recently for a variety of different similar reasons, and I think that they were basically put an ordinance in place to try to have some type of regulations or stipulations on it, because it's the same concerns that we would have had at the prior meeting, that if you don't have something in writing as far as what you're going to allow as far as what's considered a pollinator garden, you run the risk of having just anybody say, I just decided I'm not going to mow my lawn anymore, and whatever's back there is going to be a quote-unquote pollinator garden. So my issue is not, as far as enforcement, is not so much with what Mark's trying to do. I understand what he's trying to do. My issue is more or less trying to make sure that the city has some type of guidelines and regulations in place, so that it's just not a free-for-all out there. And that's why I think we're looking at trying to get more time in place to look at stuff like that. There aren't too many communities that are dealing with pollinator gardens and things like that yet, but I'm sure it's something that will be coming down the line. And so rather than reinvent the wheel, I just was aware of the fact that North Mankato had done something recently, so it gives us perhaps a starting point or something to discuss as a council. So that if you as a council decide that this is something you want to allow, that at least we've got something to try and help with enforcement too. My main concern is that, obviously you had made at least an initial decision on this, and then just went ahead and did it anyway, and now we've got to kind of revisit this issue here. And I need some guidelines from the council as far as how you want us to deal with this stuff in the future as far as enforcement. Because if we are going to be sending the letters out for nuisances, I don't want people coming back in every council meeting and trying to explain themselves after they make a decision on what they're going to do. So I need your help too as far as enforcement, or far as my officers' enforcement out there and what we're going to allow. So this might be a starting point for the city.
Mark, you got something, did you get a copy of what North Mankato has?
No, I'm familiar with this. I read it in the paper and stuff like that, and
We'll provide you with another copy just so that we know that you have received this.
Thank you
Yep.
very much. My name is Mark Haywood. Yeah, I did a lot of research on this project, and I was reminded that I did come to a council meeting last year, and we had a discussion and decided not to, and I didn't do this in spite of that conversation. I'm sorry for this. But my goal is the Department of Agriculture is kind of encouraging this. The governor is encouraging it to help protect the state bee and the bee. And last Wednesday, Shelley's Greenhouse had a presentation on pollinator gardens and what the impact is to the economy and to the nature. And I think economically wise, pollinator gardens create up to $20 million worth of resources for different plants that we all eat and that need pollinators to pollinate, such as tomatoes and apples and, you know, and a lot of people now want to bring in honeybees in their yards and things like that, you know, so, you know, there's a lot of different things that are changing. But I did have Mike down there and show him what I was doing, and he told me what his concerns were. And you know, this is you know, I'm 62 years old. It's more of a hobby, a goal that, you know, I would like to help the environment and keep it looking respectable. I put a cover crop of winter wheat on it, so the grasses would have an opportunity to establish some roots. And there's over 80% of the seed that I bought, which I have over close to $400 invested, has wildflowers and pollinator flowers. And I'm just waiting for a lot of the flower shops to drop their sale price on their perennials that they have on hand before winter hits. And I bought a couple over New Ulm yesterday, some milkweeds and stuff like that. That's kind of what my goal is, you know. If there's walnut trees growing, I'm gonna pull them out. You know, if there's any toxic weeds like stuff we can smoke or things like that, I'm gonna pull it out, you know. I did drive around and look at other pieces of property, and if the shoe fits, wear it.
How big is this garden? Is it like a regular garden, it's just an area?
I think it meets all the setbacks because it's far enough away from the road right away and the right of ways. And the part that's really over the 8 inches at this time would be the wheat that he used as cover crop to keep the seeds for his pollinators. And if I was a guessing man, as dry as it is and as far as maturity is, I bet you that in another 3 to 4 weeks, Mark could top the wheat, and it would just drop down, and the pollinators that are gonna grow are gonna come back through the, you know. And as I was driving by, and Mark just said milkweed, has anybody seen the milkweed garden in the city flower pot at the end of the alley? You know, I don't know who planted it, but that's probably at least 2 years old now, by the size of the milkweed. You know, and there's probably 100+ plants in there. So, and I don't know how the snowplow, you know, when they plowed the alley and the snow didn't destroy it, is what amazes me. So, there are some other ones that are out there, and is milkweed, now milkweed is on the list as a pollinator plant, But when I grew up, milkweed was a noxious weed. But because it collects or it attracts butterflies, now it's not a noxious weed. So this whole thing, you know, there's other, that was the one that caught my eye, you know, in a city garden. We have our own milkweed growing. And granted, the city doesn't take care of the garden, and I'm not even sure if the garden club plants that one anymore. I'm not sure who's planting that. Paula planting that anymore?
No, hi, Jean and Joni are
How big
taking
is
care of
this
it.
square of property?
25 by 30, 20 by 30.
And it's on the north side of your house, or?
No, it's up
No.
next
It's on the
to
west
Crystal
side.
Valley.
Up
West
at-
side of my building.
Right by the city garden.
Up by
Or the
Crystal
community garden.
Valley. I went around and talked to all the neighbors and.
But let's go back to that though, Mike, you know, that's an established garden, there's perimeters around that garden. As for his garden is not, it does not have perimeters, it just goes from grass to his pollinator garden. So, we can.
But is the boulevard being mowed?
Yes.
Yeah,
So if that's the case, is there any ordinance on our books currently that would stop somebody with a vacant lot from planting a vegetable garden the whole size of the lot?
not a vegetable garden because.
Well, what's the
I
difference?
got vegetables growing in there.
But that's the problem, they don't.
What's wrong with it? What's the problem? I
Just
have
wait,
vegetables
just wait,
growing.
just wait, just
But I
wait.
mean, what is the difference? There really isn't
The difference is
one.
the look, because people that
But
drive past the garden.
that's just an opinion, I
I'm
guess
not
that's.
arguing right here, that is an opinion, that's what I'm trying to get across, I mean, I'm not against him for doing this, but I'm telling you, these people that are driving past it are gonna look at his thing and think it hasn't been mowed.
So does he need a sign?
There, maybe,
I had signs up. I was told. to
but
take
you
them down.
can't have them on city signs, you will have to, do your sign on
I
a
understand.
normal.
Yeah, I wanted to wait and have this conversation.
yeah.
Before I found out if I had to mow it.
But realistically, we should have something that says, normal vegetable garden, pollinator garden, flower garden, if it's gonna be a large flower garden, has to meet setbacks.
And that, I agree
I
with
mean,
that,
if that's on the books, I would just put an ordinance in place that regulates gardens to have them within the setbacks.
That I don't think is the issue, I think it's set back, that it doesn't cause any
Yeah.
issues with
I
line of sight.
I measured your,
Yeah,
I
so
measured.
you would have to be according to this, you'd have to be 10 feet off your property line.
Yeah.
So
that's
do
at
you know
least-
where your property, you know how I measured it from the middle of the road in?
Yeah.
From that line, so from
Yeah,
that
I think
boulevard
we
line
measured
in.
7 feet from the curb in.
But I don't think you have like a line of sight issue. What I'm trying to get at is a vegetable garden looks way different than yours. Do you not agree or disagree?
You could go a block away where all the Hispanics have all those gardens.
That's
and
that's the community garden, so
They're
that's
out there-
the city's
They're
garden.
out there doing a wonderful job and that looks really well.
But they're all in rows and but that's the normal perception of a garden. So we just have to get the perception different, you know, that's what I'm saying, so when they look at yours, if they don't know it's a pollinator garden.
What I'm saying is it's gonna be the same thing with the tree plantings for the fruit orchard or anything else. If there isn't something that just regulates usage, if it's gonna be interior agriculture usage, I guess that's completely different. It should just operate by setbacks and whatever it is, it is. You know, if I call it a native grass, if I have regular grass up to the setback line and then have a native species of grass that's easier to manage, is that any different?
If it
If
goes
it's-
over 8 inches, that's
It
the
is
thing.
right now.
We,
Unless it's designated as a
but we don't have any
native
designation,
garden.
that's my.
what I'm saying, so
right.
all it has to be is designated as a native species garden. I mean, and it's gonna come up,
It's gonna come up
I know.
repeatedly.
Yeah.
and it already does,
Yeah.
because there's tons of metro areas that are planting these native species. And
So they don't use as much water.
yeah, so it's eco-friendly, you know, deep root native species. It's gonna look different, it's gonna be different, but does it really change anything? I don't know.
I just need to know, I
If it
just need to
calls
know
it
how to
out.
enforce it, Andy, that's my
Right.
concern.
No, I
I'm
don't,
not a
I don't disagree. What I'm
horticulturalist.
saying is, if there's an ordinance in the books that calls it out, if it's, whether it's gonna be an interior lot that's gonna be replanted in apple trees, as long as they're not within the setbacks, and it's called out as an apple orchard, what's the difference? I mean, there isn't really one in my eyes. New Ulm just planted a $4,000 pollinator park of their own that they maintain of their own. It's got one bench in it, and people go in there and look for butterflies. I don't know.
Well,
I mean, I don't know.
and the school, the grade school has one up on their
Yep.
property.
Right.
You know,
On
and,
the raised bed.
I always
On a
wait.
raised bed,
Yeah.
within a perimeter.
Right.
And that's how I'm viewing it,
Yeah.
and I apologize for that, I guess.
Oh, that's, yeah, you
I
know, and
just-
I could,
I'm not
my
asking.
next hobby would be to buy 25 or 36 pheasants and start raising a few pheasants in the shed and letting them go so they can go out north of town in the pasture. Then they'd have some grass to run around and stuff like that. And I'd probably put up a fence for that purpose. You know, those are all hypothetical things, you know. At this point, I'm hoping that you will come up with an ordinance that would let, that, you know, at least give this hobby a shot. Who knows, you know? I might not be here in a week. I don't know. You know, it's just something I'd like to give a try and help. There was a dozen people at this meeting down at Shelley's greenhouse. And,
Oh, I don't doubt it. It's
you know, I think it's becoming
the
pretty popular.
with the
you know,
insecticides and all the. I mean, there was.
fertilizers.
I talked to a couple orchard owners that were talking about having to bring in people to hand pollinate because there just wasn't enough. Well, the cold snap this spring, the bees from Texas didn't get up here in time, and
Yeah.
everybody was worried. So, I mean, I don't disagree one bit. I think it's just gonna be a matter of calling it out and saying
Yeah.
it's across the board. So if you have an empty lot, residential or commercial, if it meets those setbacks and you want it to be a garden,
Does it have to be an empty lot?
no. If I wanna plant my front yard, if I have the setbacks, can I plant a garden in my front yard? Is there an ordinance for that?
We have some in the front yard, so there isn't an ordinance that I know of.
But that would go back to, I would strongly encourage the 10 feet
Right.
in
The
regards to
setback.
the line of sight, because
Right.
if you are in the front yard, I obviously don't want.
But the bigger question for tonight, because I think we need to come to the table with something that spells out what our setbacks are gonna be and what's allowed for gardens slash orchards, pollinator gardens, whatever you wanna call them. You know,
Because the side yard setbacks and the front yard and backyard setbacks would all have to be enforced, just like if you were putting up a structure or anything else.
you know, so, but since Rob did, send Mark the letter, the question is, what do we do with the letter for now? And what do we do with the wheat crop? Do we let it just decay through the season? Or do we want Mark to head it off after it's germinated and turned brown and
Well, I mean, if he's open to it, I'd say put a sign up and let people know what it is, so they're not confused that it's weeds and that it is a pollinator park. And we'll try to get something on the books within the next 2 months to figure out
So-
what everybody.
And I would put in there that it has to be approved by the city.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that was my biggest mistake is I forgot about
Just
last
moving
year.
forward. It's
My
all right.
ego kicked in and.
Just moving forward, so we can get an area, you know, we can say, okay, we can go take a look at it and go, hey, this 12 by 12 area is gonna be
But
this
you don't wanna regulate everybody's garden,
pollinator.
just pollinator. Or natural grass
grasses,
or whatever.
yeah. I mean, it should be a designated pollinator garden, to be honest with you.
Sure.
Well, like I said, I don't know that you need to necessarily reinvent the wheel if another community's done something. I mean,
We'll
it's,
do an amendment to,
I mean,
well,
just like
it's
there, it's all
chapter
managed
90 of
natural
ours
lawn
too.
areas,
Yeah.
must be cut at least once annually to a height no greater than 12 inches.
What's that?
Managed lawn natural lawn areas must be cut at least once annually at a height no greater than 12 inches. That's once a year. You gotta
Well, I give
burn it,
you, I
cut
give you a
it.
copy.
Yeah, I'll look it over
So
and
please
then-
look it over.
Yeah.
So moving forward, Mark, it sounds like you will need to put up the signs, which I know you still have. So put up the signs by your garden, and then we will then start to work on the amendment to
Okay.
get this more
I
fine.
mean, everybody needs to understand, I mean, yes, the pollinator garden for the bees is a good thing, but that's not just a win-win. A pollinator garden also has insects that people can be allergic to, and they need to know what they're walking through. You get somebody that's definitely allergic to bee stings, and they don't know it's a pollinator garden. They find out after they get stung and killed that there was a pollinator garden that nobody even monitored, except let it grow. You're on the hook as far as I'm concerned.
Well, let's face it,
But it needs to be, that's why it has to be identified, so people can understand that.
we're also a
It's
rural
probably gonna
community.
be in Spanish and English.
We're also a rural community, so like I mentioned the mayor, anytime, no matter whether it's native plants or, you know, noxious weeds or long grass, makes no difference. These types of things are gonna attract rodents, they're gonna attract snakes, they're gonna attract, you know, little critters, you know, it's just the way it is. And those things that are usually outside of town will venture into town and find places like this to belong. So I mean, that's why I think we need to have something on the books to try and regulate it, so we can't just have people say, I decided I'm not gonna mow my lawn anymore, we're gonna call it a pollinator garden, cause that was kind of the issue that the chief for North Mankato talked to me about when he's, oh, you wanna do that? I'm like, yeah, well. So, you know, it was just the concerns of, you know, people that basically didn't wanna maintain anything anymore that then wanted to turn it into it. We need to have some type of guidelines for people to follow so that it's not getting out of control.
And that's probably why they put the 12-inch once a year
Right.
to maintain,
Well,
so.
that shows that somebody's maintaining it.
Right.
Exactly.
I'm guessing,
And again, I wanna be crystal clear here. You know, I think Mark's intentions are noble. He wants to, you know, have something to maintain and take care of. I have to deal with the issues of people out there that just don't wanna do something, or, you know, don't wanna maintain something. They have no interest in maintaining it at all, so they're gonna call it something, you know, which it's not. So I need that enforcement arm to be able to address those types of things.
make sense?
Yeah, like I said, you know, this is, at my age, it's more or less a hobby and a goal that I would like to accomplish, and I'm sorry for any misunderstandings that I may have caused. I think if you guys have anything more that you need to talk about, you know, you can look this over, and from what I gathered, it's pretty self-explanatory, just more or less the noxious weeds and the maintenance, and like I told Mike, you know, I did, right early on, I went out and sprayed some 2,4-D to kill off any of the weeds, and I've been pulling out a couple walnut trees and things like that already, and you know, and once Dar Rankin goes up to your subdivision and cuts all those lots up there that the grass is this tall, I'll get a hold of him and have him cut the weed down, you know. That's why, you know, everybody tries to do a good job in Medelia except for a few that make it difficult for your job. And that's unfortunate. I've lived here all my life and tried to do a good job taking care of that piece of property and my one at home, so, yeah. You know. You take
Okay.
care of your asset, the equity will come back to you.
You wanna add that? I asked them as long as.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
And add the
Thanks for your
opposing
time.
next
So-
Yep.
Spring, summer, and then it's good with it.
In light of that,
Yeah,
then
that's
what we should do, and I see what you're already doing, but shouldn't we all just make suggestions, additions, corrections to what's here, as well as us looking at how it having Chris Paul and I look at how to incorporate it into our scheme, and then do our own version of this, not completely, I don't know.
I would
completely
agree.
Copy it, but that there are nuances that I know you are already thinking about, and I know that Andy,
What's that?
you guys would, just changes,
Oh.
modifications to what this is
Yeah.
and make it our own, is what I'm saying.
Because in this one, it didn't say anything about identifying it as
Oh,
pollinator.
yeah.
Right.
You
There's a
know,
couple of
and,
things that you guys talked about that aren't in this document after we.
and North Mankato did have a couple of those natural grass ones that got really obnoxious, and they've been fighting with a couple of residents for a few years over it. We don't want that. So, I agree.
I don't know how you keep that from happening.
I don't think you do.
Well, I don't think you ever do, I mean, like, we've got about 4 or 5 residents who we already have our identified problem children, so to speak. And those are the ones that we have to deal with on a regular basis. I think what Rob's trying to get at is he just doesn't wanna show up at one of those residents and say, oh, it's a pollinator garden, and you're like,
The other thing is though, if the setbacks have to be met, and that initial portion of the project has to be maintained to other standards anyway.
right,
You
Yep.
can draw a pretty clear line that even if you're calling the overgrown patch of weeds a pollinator, well, that doesn't explain why your first 20 feet of your yard isn't mowed like a normal yard.
yep.
Yep.
So,
Okay. Number 2 on my list is discuss take appropriate action on, curb cut Olson Drive, for Mitco or Midco?
Building that's going on, Cody Eager's property. I also need to add in his 2 curb cuts. He has 2 30-foot 30-foot curb cuts also. His address is 84602 Olson Drive.
So is it Mitco or
Mid.
Mid?
MID.
Oh,
M-I-D.
sorry.
That's what I thought. Okay. Any objection to them?
is there any, not that it matters for necessarily this discussion, but is it spelled out anywhere what commercial versus residential max curb cuts are?
No, it's going into the new zoning ordinance, so.
Oh, okay.
And most of the curbs out there on the other side, aren't they drive over curb portion of that?
No.
None of that's drive over?
So this will be an additional item to the council agenda.
Okay. Okay, we'll make that number 5.
I think we have number 1, yeah,
I
well,
don't even know what that is. What is it?
Fiber optic company.
What's-
Fiber optic.
That's the pay request. Okay, anyhow, we'll add it in there.
Just on
that's on the sheet,
Long-term lease.
What?
the sheet I gave you. has
Oh,
the
no, that
addition.
was number 2.
On number 1, number 1 is the 25 curb cut,
Number 1 was Mark 8, number 2 we had.
you're on the workshop,
gotta
you
go to
need
the
the other
agenda.
sheet.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Okay, I'm moving back to the workshop one, we're done with that one. Yeah, we'll add that to the addition. Moving on to number 3 then, discuss and take appropriate action on government building RFP, advertising for RFP and accepting bids till July 9th, award proposal on July 12th council meeting. And that was just a point of information, correct?
Yes,
Because we discussed that at, long enough? Okay.
everybody else has discussed it long enough.
Did you come up with an RFP that's,
We're working on it,
okay, but you're gonna run it through legal?
yes.
Right,
legal
it's in
is-
process.
It's in
Okay.
process right
Okay.
now, yeah.
Okay,
It's not the way that I would suggest that you guys go, but it's the way that you're choosing to. and
We're
that's-
choosing
And we'll
to-
figure it out. Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
So then we can go to number 4 or not?
Yep,
Okay. Let's go to number 4, discuss, take appropriate action on, to appoint, council member. This member will fill Larry Schickling's seat, which expires 2022, correct?
2020.
Well, 2024, but
There's
this
a special
appointment
election.
of this
Oh,
person.
because we're not having a special election.
Next year will be the special election, and so when that person gets elected, they'll be only in there for a 2-year term to get the rotation back. This person that we're appointing, tonight would then fill the seat until the end of 2022.
You know, and out of the 4 listed, if I had to choose one, that's done a wonderful job for the city since he's, decided to retire from the Air Force, would be, Glenn Christensen. Because what I see from Glenn, it isn't about what he can get from the city, it's what he can give back to the city. And some of those other ones might have some agendas that might,
I just think Glenn would be better for the community. I think he has a positive outlook on where the community needs to go.
So, the application process, I mean, was it just a normal submittal? Was there any questions or any?
It was just a normal, I mean, you guys right now are just taking the applications. I don't even think we really even have to do this. Glenn had, I mean, you had the 3. Do you remember how you did Nate Ellis? I think you just appointed Nate.
we
There was
appointed
only
him.
one application, I think. So, that's pretty easy to say.
Okay, so how do you wanna do this? Do you wanna do a formal interview?
Well, yeah, I don't know that the mayor, you know, transfer in New Ulm just happened and there was like 7 applicants.
But that is also a full-time job with an office. I don't know if
Yeah,
you can help me
yeah,
out
it's
if
a-
that's any different.
But I mean, all I'm saying is,
The only time that I've seen us do this was we just said Nate, and that was it. So we have 4 people who are interested, you have applications, set it for a vote, and make a decision. It's a short term.
well, I have no problem with it.
Anybody's thoughts, I guess.
That was just my thought, no,
So,
but
you're saying after reading these applications, that's the,
in my eyes, the
That's
best
the-
person to fill the position for the council to appoint until the special election.
yep.
And then if he chooses that person that we appoint tonight chooses to run for longer, then, or maybe he won't like the council and whoever we appoint. Concerns?
I have no problem with it.
Cody?
Do we not have one from that Andrew Johnson?
I think just wondering
There is
if you're.
one.
is it
Glenn's
there?
I don't have. Glenn just said the posting one.
Oh, I thought this was
Otherwise,
Glenn's that I was
no.
reading. Oh. This guy in Newtown?
He lives in, Dale Williams,
Oh,
farm place up
Okay.
there.
He's over where he's at, too.
Michelle, his wife works at the liquor store.
Plus, doesn't Andrew Johnson, he lives in the farmhouse and he goes south during the winter, doesn't he?
He does, I think he's still in the military and so he travels a lot.
No, he's retired,
He goes down somewhere and still trains.
doesn't he? Okay. So, anyhow, he wouldn't be here the whole time,
Yeah.
so,
Okay, so, I guess we really need to decide how we wanna move forward. We can call them all in at the next council meeting and do formal interviews with them. Otherwise, we can
I
appoint
would,
somebody and,
I would hope somebody would make a motion to approve Glenn and the second, and we
Well,
vote
we'll put it as a council agenda item.
and put it at the council agenda, and if you guys don't want my thought, and you choose one of the others, and, it's gonna take, 3 votes, so.
Well, is it in the bylaws? Is it mayoral appointment? It's not mayoral
There
appointment.
is no, and when we.
It's a
I called
really
it in,
vague
it's
statement.
very vague.
It's a
Like,
mayoral appointment.
Yep, so it's very vague in regards to filling this for the remainder of the term. Obviously, the last 2 years
What
of
would
the
you like,
term-
Mayor?
I would like Glenn to be my 5th council member until the special election.
Can he make a motion like that? Is that his to make?
He's just telling us his preference.
He's telling his preference, and then we'll put it as an agenda item if you guys wanna put it on the council's agenda to appoint Glenn or whoever, and we can go forward. Then Glenn would come in the next council meeting and do the oath.
Put it on the agenda.
Okay. Dave, you got the luck.
Takes 3 votes.
Right.
Yep.
There we go.
Okay.
Questions, concerns, that's the end of the or the workshop.
I borrowed the personnel committee to discuss,
It's in the workshop.
Got some applicants?
yeah, that was
Nice. How many?
we said, I'm still at the same number. but-
One?
Little more than that,
Okay.
not as many as I'd like, but since you both are here, could we try and set a night to do interviews that would work for everyone?
Like how soon are you thinking?
Well, you're
Probably
going on
after you're
vacation.
back
You
from
know-
your
You know it's about that.
unavailability,
When Andy comes back, I'd be happy to help you.
like I think, I know, the first week of July is technically the last week of June too, so maybe why
Yeah,
not
I'll
do
be
the,
back the 28th, so.
I don't know.
Any non-Tuesday, Thursday after the 28th.
So like a
A Wednesday.
Wednesday then.
A Wednesday or a Monday?
Trying to remember if you worked at,
Or
I
non-council
don't know my
Monday?
schedule here.
All right, yeah, I'm not council.
Should we try to tentatively do it for June 30th?
Yeah.
Chris?
How mu-
Okay.
you
No?
can- You can email me how many interviews that's gonna be.
Any other concerns from anybody out there on, workshop items? No?
Pool operation, any updates? Everything's going well?
So far, except for not being able to balance the chemical in the small pool. But that's about it. But everything else is going good.
Kids are swimming.
The kids
How
are
hard-
safe.
We've had perfect weather for,
Mhm.
Put our own splash pad in.
Building a splash pad, so I actually acquired some quotes last year on splash pad before we started this whole
Yeah.
A splash pad costs just as much as building a pool. Doesn't make any sense until you actually look at the dynamics underneath a splash pad. The dynamics of a splash pad, you have the ones where the water just goes into the earth, or the water actually reverses, it recycles and comes back out, but it actually comes to be, and I think Andy, you know that. It
Yeah,
almost
they got one.
costs as much as building a pool.
They have both
If not
types
more.
in New Ulm, don't they?
Yeah, I think they do. I think they got a recycling.
They got the recycling and they got the one that dumps the water, and the one that dumps the water costs just as much to run as the recycling.
Yeah, it's supposed to be energy or water efficient, cause it's got, I don't know,
It's got a different, texture to it.
I think you guys just need to build a water park.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ours would be awesome, and everybody would come
It's called the
because
Watermelon River.
there's not one, the closest one is Fairmont or Sleepy Eye or Redwood. Mankato doesn't even have one. People will come from all over.
They
for
do,
a water
Spring
park.
Lake Park.
Oh, do they have?
Yeah, they
It's
have,
kinda
yeah,
open right now.
Yeah.
Was that what that was?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Oh,
horrible.
did it?
yeah, so they're all around and, all of those well, last year's a bad example, but the last full year that Fairmont ran their water park, the city of Fairmont subsidized the pool at $147,000. So I don't know what Sleepy Eye ran in the red,
I'm sure we do.
but we subsidized our pool the last year we had it open at about $40,000.
Mike, can we, close the work?
Oh yeah, we need to close the workshop.
Oh, sorry.
I'll make a
Well,
motion.
sir,
I'll make a
I-
motion to
The
close
only
the
reason I
workshop.
say this
I'll
is I
second.
would like to talk to, okay, it was,
I motion,
Andy and
Cody seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
I would
Opposed?
like to, pull the attorney and discuss something with him, that's why. I'm
Okay,
just-
but anyhow,